As Mehta sir has already mentioned that we need to stay in some limits. This is the latest data which we received yesterday, published by NASA, that we are already in 1.32 degree high above the global average temperature compared to pre-industrial era. This is continuously 11th month in highest temperature data from the globe. So welcome this as well. Welcome this as well, because if we continue to do like this, then 1.5 degree will raise it to 2 months of equivalent drought. And if we continue, you can see the scenario, soon we'll become Mars. No need to explore further if we don't take actions. So welcome to this as well. One thing which is really important to remember, which we mostly forget, that when we talk about climate change, we are always doing the blame game. He is doing this, we are not doing, he is doing this, he is emitting, we are not emitting, and things like that. And it is valid for everyone, including the individuals, including the one industry to another, one sector to another, one country to another. But we forget that we are living in a closed system. Our actions have their own consequences, and it is valid for everyone. So remember, now we continue. So we understood that climate change has effect on each of us, and one of the major emitter in carbon emissions or greenhouse gases, energy sector is significant one. So we really need to take some actions or strong actions to address the decarbonization possibility towards this sector. I am addressing energy because I belong to this field. But that doesn't mean that all of you have to work in that direction. You can also contribute in your respective fields as well. But more or less, energy sector contribute to almost 20% of the global emissions. So it is a significant one. Having said that, let's focus and understand what is the current scenario in our country, so that we can figure out what we are here for. Very ambitiously, our government wants to have a rapid expansion of GDP, $35 trillion economy by 2047. And to have better human index, we want to become a developed nation, which is a good thing, which is good for everyone. And this suggests that the energy demand will be so high that we need to compromise in a manner that whether we should continue developing or we should focus on our carbon footprints. So, scenario one. Second one is, as Dr. Mehta has already mentioned, we are one of the youngest country. So what has happened, if you go like 100 years back, the previous generations were not that much aware about the implications of the development and use of fossils they were doing, because it's a scientifically thing that if you are taking actions today, global actions in terms of climate effect, good or bad, the effect will be reflected after 20 years. So you have to understand that whatever good you do today will be reflected 20 years after, and whatever bad you do, it will be after that. So the main concern here today is not us, frankly. It is the generation which is about to come, your children, your grandchildren. And this is where we have to understand. And this generation, which is already Gen Z, which is known as digital natives, they are very well aware about what you are doing, what you have done. So even if you are not doing anything, it will be criticized. Or if you are doing wrong, it will be criticized. So it's better to take good credit and do something good. So that's the second scenario. As I mentioned, that we need to decarbonize sector of energy. If you go through all these energy sectors or energy producing technologies, you will figure out that the least carbon emitting sector are mainly two. One nuclear, and then second one is hydro. Now, hydro has its own limitation because it is based on natural resources. You cannot have it everywhere. So eventually you are left with only one option. You accept it or not, but it is a fact. The good part is, nuclear is not only addressing your energy demand. Along with this, it has multiple utilizations which you can go. And it is really nice that it can partner with other renewable energies for your net zero course. And most importantly, which we never accept, I don't know why we have this understanding that anything coming from outside the country is good, but from inside it is. So India has proven that nuclear technologies are beyond surprises or at par with the global nuclear technologies. We have set many records in terms of operation, in terms of safety in the country. So we have proven competencies, we have proven capabilities to expand. We are producing the most number of engineers and scientists in the world, even exporting them. So we have the third scenario. Now the concerns. We understood that everything we have a problem, we have a solution. Still it is being almost 70 years and we are still, as mentioned by ma'am, it is like 1.8, close to 2. And it will reduce if we won't go fast because the energy demand is increasing. And if we have to follow this development goals of 2047, then it will be even faster. Then what are the challenges? As I mentioned, hurdles and obstacles. This we have to understand what are the really hurdles which we can really overcome quickly, or what are the obstacles which we need to spend time and get rid of them as well. So what are the concerns? For me, this is the first one. Don't focus on image and reading because you can see it everywhere across the country. When you see these sort of scenarios, it is mentioned, our energy, your tomorrow. And you will be surprised that nuclear is not the part of it. So if we know it is the solution, then why it is not the part of it? So this is one of my concern. Another one is, which I went through this report which was published by the principal scientific advisor to the PM organization, which was very well curated by brilliant minds of the country. But few things which I really wanted to understand. Now, before I read this, I wanted to understand the thinking. If you go back to the history, whether you take war, whether you take growth plans, if you really want to grow, to lead, or to become developed nation, your thinking, your attitude defines where you will be leading. So, if you really want to do this, then individuals, industry, youth, institutions, academicians, politicians, all of us should have that sort of attitude. Then only we can move further. So, few points which I got, that US domestic nuclear capacity has potential. I feel that we also have. So we should encourage this part and understand that because of the trade bans and lack of indigenous uranium. So this defines a very precise problem which we have in front of us. Now this is a good part, but it is our responsibility that we should address this. Now this is one of the topic of discussion for today, that how we can address this, how we can solve this, whether it's a hurdle or an obstacle, or if we can really bring out some innovative solution to that. One more point which is really interesting, I saw that India has planned to explore greater role of nuclear energy. But I still don't see how. We want to go multifold, but how? If we want to multiply the nuclear capacity, That means more number of reactors. That means more number of resources are required. So what are those plans which are missing if you read through different stakeholders? So this is another concern. And last, in what they are trying to discuss and how they feel about it. This is the latest one which I found in, which was asked in the last session of December last year. And this describes a really nice question, which was demanding what are the scenario of SMRs and how we can go further and how it should be addressed. The answer was pretty small. I'm not sure it has been debated or what. This maybe we need to dig further to understand. But few points which are missing, which I always try to see in terms of our discussion, that even if we talk about SMRs, is there any indigenous program about it, or we have our own design about it? Are we doing some sort of thinking or redirectional thing in this direction? Or what should be the timeline? We have set the timeline for GDP growth, but then there should be actionable timeline for other things as well, which will lead to this 35 trillion. Have a dedicated knowledge or experience in nuclear. On the other hand, Department of Atomic Energy has a good resource and knowledge. Of course, they are the driver of this in the country. And there are youth organizations, think tank like IOINS, there are many more forums who are ambitious as well. They have some sort of knowledge as well, but they are not resourceful like that. What is the missing link is that all three of them are not very well connected. So I feel, is there a way where we can actually connect themselves and we can find out innovative solution to solve this scenario as well? So this is my last concern. As I mentioned, I am not here to talk about just the problems we have. Today's forum is mainly to find out the problems, challenges, and discuss to find the solutions as well. And this requires really a model shift approach to have nuclear energy for new India, as we say. And one of the layman solution which I feel should be that there should be some immediate actions where we can take examples of existing fleet, existing experience in nuclear energy in combination with the renewable energies. Then there should be some midterm policy where we can highlight the small and micro modular reactors, Gen 4 reactors. And then we should also invest today in long-term strategies like fusion, which is already showing many credible results now. We have seen many breakthrough in last 2 years majorly. Before ending, I would really like to address Mr. Bhabha, not only because he is the father of Indian nuclear program, but he was the person who decided to build a reactor when we were not even having money to actually feed our population. And that too at a time where the Western powers were really going really fast at that point of time. Cut to today, we have everything, I feel, in terms of knowledge, money, decision making, whatever you want. Then why are we still not there? Now, that's the open discussion for today. And I invite all of you to brainstorm on that. And by end of the discussion, we'll have some sort of way forward to take us. Thank you so much.
Addressed by a very special guest. Dr. Sunil Pandey, Director Circular Economy and Waste Management, Delhi, is an expert in municipal, industrial and hospital waste management with over 30 years of research and consultancy experience. Dr. Pandey's areas of expertise include air, water and soil quality monitoring, site assessments and performance evaluation of effluent treatment plants. Please put your hands together and welcome on the podium Dr. Sunil Pandey.
I have not directly worked on nuclear waste. You know, it's a much regulated field. But we find that when we go through characteristics, go through regulation. It's very similar to industrial waste, which we call hazardous waste, and but it requires much more sophisticated safety measures basically to handle it. What I'll do is it naturally has a potential, as said by our earlier speaker, that it's a good solution, possible good solution to net zero. And also the way solarization is happening in the country, another net zero option. Nuclear, if developed successfully, will have much lower footprint than the kind of megawatt-based solar power plants we are looking at, and much less land will come under nuclear. What I would like to touch is some environmental aspects of the nuclear energy. And when you look at nuclear power produced from nuclear power plant, we also need to consider, if you look at energy-related issues, energy required during, say, mining, processing fuel, also looking at refining into fuel, and also constructing and building nuclear power plants, because they require, as I said, they require much higher safety measures, so much higher cost of material to be put in the nuclear power plants, whether it is concrete, specialized concrete, steel, and also, so all these steps, also some energy is consumed. So that needs to be on a life cycle basis, that also needs to be factored in. You look at environmental aspects of operating nuclear power plants. Mining, of course, has a similar problem to mining other minerals, mine tailings, overburdens that would require, that obviously, as the literature says, are low radioactivity material will decay out to innocuous level at some point of time. But it requires some attention at the time when the ore is being mined and it's left there. Another concern is kind of emissions which are getting generated, because we used to read at some point of time thermal discharge used to be a major concern. I don't know how much is the development now, because most of these reactors are close to coastal areas where they directly, thermal discharge is directly into the coastal waters, and that has in past shown some adverse impact in the vicinity where such high temperature water is discharged. So how much to cool? Technology, of course, has progressed. Earlier, most of the reactors were once through cooling systems, so technologies have solution, looking at cooling tower kind of measures where, water can be sufficiently used in cycles and sufficiently cooled before discharging into water. But probably Professor Kakotkar would be able to say more about that when he comes here. Also important is the fuel, the depleted fuel which is left out, and also the cooling of the fuel which is done in the storage coolant water. That becomes radioactive in the process, and that has high radioactivity value. And of course, as a waste management, it requires a special way of handling it. It has to be, depending on the radioactivity, it has to be treated, vitrified. When you say vitrified, it's basically converting that into glass-like structure. In our hazardous and toxic waste management, also for some very infectious or toxic waste, we follow that technique. We convert the waste into glass-like structure so that nothing leaches out of that, and then encapsulate it in the casing, which doesn't allow radioactivity to go out. And then it has to be stored in specially designed trenches, especially designed, preferably subsurface underground storages. But if they are not available, then above ground in a properly secured area where there is sufficient protection and inaccessibility to people or other animals and all that. And there are examples how in say a country like US has been storing its high level radioactivity waste in underground mines. But it's a really long process, long time process, and it has to be stored there for many numbers of years before the radioactivity goes to the level where you don't need to bother about that. The liquid waste, of course, we have a process for dealing with that also. And looking at essentially all the emissions and liquid waste, there are control technologies, but essentially they work around how the decay happens and how ultimately the radioactivity level goes down so much that it can be then treated as a normal waste. There have been also interesting literature, though in India, if you look at our coal power plants, they say that our coal doesn't contain much background radioactivity. But also there is interesting data from US literature that when you look at radioactivity, net residual radioactivity being emitted by nuclear power plants, it's at times lower than what is being emitted through fly ash in many countries which are operating on thermal power plant. But with a disclaimer that in India, we still claim that our coal has not got much residual radioactivity. Also, I was also looking at some literature from BARC. It says that spent fuel contains certain radionuclides as a daughter products, which has also some beneficial use, which can be used in medicine, which can be used in other applications, which again shows that there's a possibility also if we design our system smartly, if we handle our waste smartly, there's also possibility to derive benefit from that. This is something which we call waste to wealth, not exactly in non-innocuous, non-hazardous waste type, but this possibility of deriving some resources from the waste. Key critical issue, which we often probably don't discuss, is at the time, say after 25, 30, 35, 40 years, when the nuclear plant goes out of commissioning and it has to be closed, then how the decommissioning, there's a protocol, there's everything in place, how much cost decommissioning would incur, and whether that has been put in when we cost the nuclear power plants, whether that cost has been included in overall cost for operating nuclear power plants, and also energy power derived from nuclear power plant. Unit-wise, it's much lower. I don't know what's the current numbers, but unit-wise, it's much lower, but whether the decommissioning cost has been loaded on that or not. And land use after certain years of decommissioning, when it is certified that it's safe now to have an alternate development. What kind of alternate development and what development, that needs to be still probably worked out. There have been many examples elsewhere, but that probably has to be shown a little more attention. Another aspect which I found interesting was looking at earlier, many years back, we used to have a lot of environmental impact assessment activities happening. I was also discussing this with Dr. Rastogi. When the new plants were coming, the environmental impact assessment also requires to be very customized for nuclear power plants. We know that this industry is very different from normal chemical industry or normal non-chemical industry. So a very customized environmental impact assessment approach has to be followed, not only for nuclear power plant per se, but also storage of fuel, storage of waste material after it's coming out of plant and all the decommissioning and everything. So that basically requires to be tackled in a proper manner. So that is something which on the environmental aspects of the nuclear energy, it's very interesting, very promising. I wanted to put through, and with that I'll close my remarks. And thank you so much.
A nuclear physicist and a mechanical engineer who has significantly contributed to India's nuclear program. He served as the director of BARC from 1996 to 2000 and then the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission of India and Secretary to the Government Department of Atomic Energy from 2000 to 2009. He oversaw India's Operation Shakti, conducting the Pokhran-2 nuclear test. Please put your hands together for Dr. Anil Katkar.
Dr. Nitendra Singh, our hero today. And there is always, when you start a meeting, somebody has to set the tone. And one way of describing that setting the tone is to set the question paper. And I think I must congratulate Dr. Nitendra Singh for setting the toughest question paper. And a toughest question paper set by the youth. And I'm sure the correct and the best solution for that paper again would be provided by the youth. And it's only a question of how do we integrate the youth in addressing these issues. And that, I think, is the theme of this meeting. So compliments to IYNS for setting up this meeting. Dr. Sunil Pandey, I think any development has to address the positive consequences of development, which of course are all welcome, but also has to address the negative consequences of development. And it's important, we talk about circular economy and development of technologies to facilitate circular economy. But I think we should, particularly when we take a path which we want to create a significant new inflection, we must address that part. And I'm actually triggered to respond to this question about thermal pollution, which Dr. Pandey raised by mentioning an anecdote. This was sometime in late 90s. At that time, the environmental pollution norm for thermal pollution was that the thermal discharge from power plants must be less than 10 degrees. And one day, suddenly a new regulation came in, and that 10 degrees got reduced to 5 degrees. I'm sure, Dr. Pandey, you remember that. I was director BAR, so only looking at R&D. Nuclear power was being looked at by NPCI. Even today it is like that. But for some reason I started getting calls after calls from the thermal power producers, NTPC and the like, all others. And said, this suddenly, this is there, we are not able to meet that standard, and if you have to meet so much of extra capital cost. And then I kept asking them that that is all right, it's fine, but why are you telephoning me? You either telephone Ministry of Environment or you telephone some professional society, industry body and all. So he said, no, thermal pollution is a common issue between thermal power plants and nuclear power plants. And so as Director BAR, the head of R&D institution, you must take lead in this. So I called my colleagues from BAR who were dealing with the marine biology part. And I asked them, what do you know about this? So he said, nothing. So I said, no, you go around, talk to colleagues in that profession and figure out what do we know about this. They said, nothing. Then we decided that if that be so, then let us call a national meeting. So we called a national meeting at Kalpakam, called every marine biologist whom we could connect with. So there were some 80 odd marine biologists. And again raised this question that look, this change, including people from Ministry of Environment, it was all collective exercise. And again the same question, what do you know about this? So they all said nothing. So then I said, what is the fuss about? If we know nothing, then we can't go back to say that, well, why did you change? Maybe the ministry knows something. So you cannot challenge it, because after all, it's a national body to look after our interests. The stability of Mother Earth, and of course, the consequence is an existential challenge, whether we will exist, the humanity will exist or not. Now, total energy that India consumes today is of the order of 6,500 terawatt hours. That's the current state. And I'm not talking about electricity alone, all energy put together, although I have put the units as terawatt hours, but it's total energy. We also have this great aspiration of being a developed country, Vikasita Bharat. Now, the figures on the bottom left-hand side, it's actually a very popular correlation between Human Development Index and the energy that we consume. And you only concentrate on these blue dots, blue triangles, which are aligned on a horizontal line near the top. Those are all developed countries of the world. India's position is also shown in that among the green dots. And when we say we want to be a Vikasit Bharat, we must lift India from those green dot conglomerate to the blue dot conglomerate. And you can notice that there is a threshold, there is a minimum energy which we must acquire, we must get access to be counted among those countries. And that minimum threshold in this figure is at around, it's not very clearly visible, but 2,400 kilogram oil equivalent per capita per year. That multiplied by the population of the country would tell you how much energy India should have to be Vikasit Bharat. Now this, going forward, our technology is going to improve. There is going to be a lot of electrification, which will contribute to much better efficiencies. So there is reason to believe that we couldn't become Vikasit Bharat by reaching a somewhat lower threshold than 2,400 kilogram. This is an estimate. My estimate is even with 1,400 kilogram oil equivalent per year, one could become Vikasit Bharat. But even that 1,400 kilogram oil multiplied by Indian population will give you a number which is 28,000 terawatt hours. And that's the ballpark range which Dr. Nitendra Singh had said, 25,000 to 30,000 terawatt hour. And these are all ballpark numbers. So that's where we must land ourselves, but without increasing the carbon footprint. So you have this dual challenge, aspiration of development, and to do that without creating the existential threat, which means we have to decarbonize those. So today everything is more or less coming from fossil energy. We must migrate from fossil energy to clean energy, which doesn't emit carbon dioxide. But we must increase our energy access to 4 times the current use. That is the challenge. Now, of course, what are the clean energies? We all talk about renewable energy, very important. How much renewable energy we have on Indian landmass? And that number, somehow there has not been much discussion on that. It took me some time to figure out and collect data. But after being all liberals summing up, I'm not able to exceed more than 8,000 terawatt hours. So that is about the limit of renewable energy. Its share has to necessarily increase, but we'll have to deliver this both as electricity as well as hydrogen. So that is the way forward. Now, question is, can we really go anywhere close to this kind of numbers, 2,500 gigawatt electric? So let us look at the nuclear resource profile, very broad. And mind you, these are all, I'm a retired person, so I'm only capable of doing back of envelope calculation. I have stopped doing those detailed analysis and scholarly reports and all, because I find many times they don't give the right answer, they only give confusing answers. Back of envelope is the proof, the check for everything, and whether a detailed report, and we have many such reports coming from different places. In fact, many foreign institutions are very eager to teach us what is right for India, and a lot of reports coming, which are India-specific reports done by these people. So I don't believe all that. I believe what my back of envelope numbers tell me. Now, if you search internet, the total uranium that the uranium resources in the world is of the order of 6 to 9 billion tons. And total thorium is around 6 million tons. Now, what about India? India, the situation is reverse. We have around 0.3 million tons of uranium, which was, at my time, it was only 0.06 million tons, 60,000 tons. And then, of course, at that time, because we felt uranium scarcity, we launched a massive exploration program. So that has gone to 0.3, but it's a low-grade ore. But still, that's our resource. But we have certainly around 1 million tons of thorium, or maybe more. And that's our strength. If we really exploit thorium, we have energy which will be sufficient for us, won't say all time to come, but for sufficient time till fusion energy takes over.
I would now like to introduce Dr. S.S. Manod, Vice President.
India has been have created marvelous records in the nuclear sector. Then why aren't we leading that in that domain also? So that is why indigenous and innovation, along with the development and growth of the nation, is what the target and what we want to achieve with this particular idea. So obviously, when we say that indigenous, the words like Make in India, Atmanirbhar, startup culture, and all are on the same basket when we talk about, which are currently more enthusiasm, which encourages more enthusiasm in the youth that yes, we can develop something of our own, some sources, some ideas, some in technology, club together with some support and some guidance from the more stalwarts in the field that we can be developed. So basically, Make in India, as the sir said, that if we reduce the size of the reactor, then the number of the reactors in the domain will increase. So if we are placing a 1000 megawatt reactor in a domain, and if I say that I'll only want 10 megawatt, I'll have to place 100 reactors. So if I have to make 100 reactors, I have to have industry making it in a parallel sector. I'll have to have, not, so the couple of industries will not be sufficient for me, 2 to 3 industries who know how to make it. So now we have to expand our zone that, MSMEs or each and every major industries and majority of the industries in every sector should come up together to build it. So that way, the indigenization will require localization as well as support from the MSMEs to the large industries as well. Along with that, Atmanirbhar. So if I say today we built up 100 reactors, I'll need 100 operators, 100 skilled persons who will be working for that, 100 safeguard opportunities. So this is also increasing the domain of job creation as well as the skilled workforce, or what we are saying is the capacity building. That capacity building then has to be also indigenous. We cannot say that, so if I made a reactor, I have 100 reactors in place, but only few people running them, then it is again we'll be having an error in that format. So the capacity building for tomorrow should also start today. That is where the complete Atmanirbharta of the particular idea will come into picture. The outcome, definitely, if this we are able to achieve it, will be the technological reliance or energy self-reliance. Because if we are developing our own, then the security is in our hands, not someone depend upon import or export in that manner. So the solution, one particular answer to that particular question of the today's question paper is the Suksham. Why are we targeting 30 megawatt thermal or 10 megawatt electric power output? This number we had chosen because majority of the forging industries require somewhat heat closer to 30, 20 or 25 megawatt in that domain. And if you have to go about electricity, then a multiple of 10 megawatt electric will be a suitable one, so that multiply and a series of formation can be made. With this, refueling cycle definitely will affect, the range in the refueling cycle of 10 to 15 years will come from the intended application what we are trying to achieve. If you want a heat as an application, high heat can be drawn, the burn up will be higher, it has to be refueled faster. Electricity, low heat, lower temperatures will be there, burn up can be contained, and we can have a longer refueling time also. Then the part was, if you are making it small, then it should also reach each and every place, nooks and corners of India, and for every possible terrain, scenario, weather, everything. So then it has to be in a smaller manner where one such vehicle which can go about is the train connectivity and rail transport. So road transport. So that connects our India to the every part, from the every nook and corner to the main streets and highways. So that the size can come from a similar manner. It has to be contained within the domain. So, and then the part is the conceptual. So currently the design is in conceptual manner, and since we said that, it has to cater to multiple solutions in one domain. Like, if you want hydrogen, different product. If you want heat, a different setting needs to be made. If you want electricity, a different product needs to be made, or a different setting needs to be considered. So along with that particular part, thus the structural material, the coolant, the piping needs to be changed. So, currently we are looking for 3 different ideas for 3 particular applications. We are looking for fluoride-based lithium, beryllium options, some carbide options are there. We are looking for the coolant, since it's a molten reactor in its own format. So, it provides the coolant in itself. But if we require something others, we are looking for that too. And we are looking for one of the idea which is coming up now is using of, heat pipes. Most efficient of one of the transferring the heat energy there. So we are able to maximize the energy output, what can be done in this manner.
What IYNS is trying to tell us. We need to focus on indigenization increasingly. And that is simply because the politics steps into relationships when you go through path dependencies, even with best of your friends. We heard Dr. Anil Kakodkar saying in the morning, even if world was a happy family, there is a limit on the resource itself as to how much of power generation can be done using the resources that we have. But then you step in and see that it's not just the cap on the resource, but how that resource is distributed around the world. For last 15 years, we've been hearing about Westinghouse, General Electric, Areva reactors coming to India, because the waiver led to India being now capable and welcome to do nuclear commerce with the other major nuclear powers. But it hasn't happened. And primarily, of course, because Americans are not happy with the Civil Nuclear Liability Bill, the Act that we have now, even after several improvisations that we have done upon that Act. And our limitation is that that Act was built based on our experience and memories of Bhopal gas tragedy and what had happened to India from that incident or accident, and that led to creation of a certain act which is not acceptable to American companies. Now, those contentions will always make us vulnerable to someone switching off the tap at any given time, particularly times of crisis. Then, of course, the limitations of optimizing the utilization, operational levels of operations, operational utility of each of these reactors. I, as an outsider, read about Kalpakkam, Tarapur, aging. What is that phasing out when we are not even capable of expanding the new power generation, power plants? Older plants have problems of optimizing use of the resource that we might get, whatever way we might get. Then I come from politics, political science policies. There are disjunctions within our country. Even if government wants to expand the nuclear power generation, all of you remember what happened to Haripur in West Bengal. What happens to protests in Kalpakkam? Implementing, even when you think of the scenario being happy-go-lucky, has its own limitations. So fundamentally, what we are saying then is, can we at least remove some of the limitations that flow from path dependencies on foreign national companies or foreign countries, and expand on indigenization? Now the question that Shilpa asked me about, which of the reactors should be preferred? Micro reactors that IYNS is proposing, small reactors, or large size reactors? For me, do we have a choice? If we are thinking of running a bullet train almost in an open farm field without tracks, if we are that ambitious, should we even be discussing between the choices of micro, small and large size nuclear reactors? We should be pushing things wherever we can, in that sense of doing all possible ways wherever we can expand nuclear power generation. And I would like to see the third stage of what Bhava had imagined us to finally achieve, because we heard Dr. Kakotkar saying our resource of thorium is way much more, and it is our own resource. Then of course comes politics of industry, whether India has been discouraged, disincentivized in not pursuing that path. I mean, after all, how come for half a century we have not followed that path? Are there any ulterior motives? Are there any compulsions, coercions that explain why we have not done what we think is doable and what will make India much more capable and independent of producing nuclear power on our own? We all understand that the referent principle is that we all want to see a rapid exponential growth in power generation. Of course, right now wind energy contributes more than nuclear energy, but we don't have choice of making selection between various resources. We have to use all resources that are possible, and particularly resources that make India much more independent. And I think that is where, let me close by saying, this initiative of IYNS needs to be really looked at by the government very seriously as to how youth is looking at problems in a very different fashion than maybe some of our seniors like me and like you have looked at so far. Can that open us in terms of giving us new opportunities in adding wherever we can? And I think, to me, the lesson would be indigenization. And indigenization goes back to academia, our institutions of higher learning, which is where we need to also bring the focus. The government has to focus on first creating the resource in terms of human resource that we have. Look at the focus that we now have from the government on semiconductor industry. Can we have a similar focus in promoting training and education in terms of nuclear science, and particularly if you are looking at micro reactors, which are going to be labor intensive definitely. We need so much more skilled manpower in that field. So fundamentally, to me, challenges are extremely complex. Time is very limited. We have to just try and do everything in every field possible, particularly including in nuclear industry. Whatever we can achieve, whatever way we can achieve. Because for me, 2047 is where Indian population will start shrinking, even earlier from late 2030s. Global attention, the vibrancy, the excitement that we see today in our youth may not be the resource during that time. So this is a window of opportunity for us that we have to do something unusual, create unusual models, create unusual innovations, and create a Viksit Bharat which need not be like the developed industrialized countries like G7, which have created a lot of ruination through profit-driven, market-driven urbanization, industrialization. We may have to find new paths for ourselves. And I'm, of course, tempted to quote Gandhi on this in terms of sustainability, but let me stop here. Thank you.
If you see the current SMR industry globally also, there are several designs available. They are in different stages. Few are in concept stage, few are in prototype development. So if you see the commercially available SMR technology is very limited globally also. The technology is under development. Even many leading manufacturers are suggesting that the earliest the time frame the SMR would be commercially available will be 2030, 2032. So considering that global technologies are not easily available, at least for next 8 to 10 years, whatever the best technology we have, we can start adopting and try to improve the existing design. Right now we have small reactor, 220 megawatt, but it may not be originally designed as a modular reactor, but can we improve the design to make it modular? Of course, by definition, 220 is a small reactor, small modular reactor. Only thing is, it is not modular the way we are thinking about external technologies, imported technologies. So we can improve the existing design, make it a better version to make it modular. So that is one step. Of course, we have to develop new technologies, new reactors, because we need to have all the three types. Large reactor to rapidly add capacities, small reactors to meet the industrial decarbonization, process industries, and micro reactor, as Dr. Nayak told, in some places like Northeast or some places where the seismic conditions are not favorable for conventional large reactor, probably we can go for micro reactors in those seismically sensitive zone. So I would say all three types we have to pursue. Currently, in order to accelerate the decarbonization of industries, we can go with what we have currently available, the small reactor, improve the version as we go forward, and try to adopt the newer technologies. Of course, we have to be open for accepting the newer technologies.
Mix of the three. Dr. Naik, if I come back to you, even when we had the G20 summit in India, we were talking mainly about the SMR technology. The FPR or the micro ones were perhaps not even spoken of back then. So how do you, of course we are seeing that there is an inclination towards SMR technology, there is much more discussion on that. But if that were to happen, if we were to go for foreign built SMR technology, we'll also have to look at the uranium reserves and the tie-ups accordingly. So how does that actually help us in energy security when we then become dependent on perhaps other countries?
See how SMR is relevant for India. Let me make it very clarify. We are a small land, please understand. India is a small land, huge population, and it's a growing population. That is the reason we don't get enough land to build conventional large size reactors. If had we got, there is no need of going for SMR, this, that. Had we been having the luxury like America or Europe, I'll say that the SMR is not for India. We can export to our neighboring countries. Because we have small land, huge population, practically very less number of sites are available to build conventional reactors. So next target became apparent, go for SMR. But where to build SMR? So then we thought, SMR, let us not put in a conventional site. You have a greenfield site available. Please don't think of SMR for that. Same thing we did with NIAS. SMR is exclusively for a brownfield site where the site is close to a public domain. We cannot get that luxury except the one which Mr. Naveen told as well as Mr. Raghavan told. These are close to the public domain but not in the public domain. So this becomes our policy too. What is happening internationally? Let me tell you very bluntly, because SMR I have worked at least for 5-7 years. Internationally, SMRs which were being designed, they are not targeted to put in a public domain. That's what Dr. Kapoor also spoke. They are not super safe reactors, which today we are talking about. Because we are talking about SMR to put in a retiring coal plant so that the public can live just outside the plant. So that is why the requirement for us is much more stringent than what international people are doing. Probably they are changing now their goalpost because they know India is a huge market. Let us redesign our SMRs looking for India. So what Mr. Raghavan told, this is our strategy one. There is a hungry India waiting for captive power plants to be replaced by nuclear. So strategy one is whatever is our existing technologies available, 220 megawatt PHWR, with some minor changes, deploy it immediately as much as possible. But then Dr. Kakurkar, if you have listened to his lecture, there is a constraint with the fuel. So that is why we're talking about a new innovative fuel called ANIL, which can reduce the amount of the fuel consumption. That is strategy one. Strategy two, look what China has done. Very intelligently, we have to be all intelligent, whoever is sitting here. What China did, China borrowed the technology from Russia and made its own SMR. And it is in a very advanced stage of development. Once it does, they will be the world supplier of SMR because cheap and it's the Russian technology. So we have also very narrow time frame towards that. If we want to be a global, because once we, whatever Professor Naik is saying, Salesh Naik ji is saying, I'm also agreeing, look at 2,500 gigawatt from nuclear. If we talk about 20 crore per megawatt, India will be requiring $5 trillion, $5 to $6 trillion investment in the next 20 years. And today's our economy is only 3.7 or $4 trillion. So, $5 to $6 trillion investment, where will you get? Not from India. Foreign investment is a must. So that path also we have to look at. That's what I am agreeing to him. Something else also has to be proved. So, alone I can do everything, okay, to some extent. This I am revealing here, because I have written in that book. If you look at our own domestic energy resources, today, if we follow the closed fuel cycle, whatever God has given us, it can support 18 lakh terawatt hour total energy. And if I talk about 100 years for fission energy to continue after that, assuming fusion took up, so it can supply up to 18,000 terawatt hour per year. Almost 50% of today's, tomorrow's total energy, clean energy requirement. And the rest all has to be imported in terms of fuel. So there is room, enough room for foreign fuel and foreign technology. We have to marry with a foreign participant. So that we have to look for with whom we can do the scientific cooperation, technology cooperation, get the technology developed on the soil so that cost is economical and flourish it. I said 1,000 gigawatt is possible in the brownfield site through SMR, both for captive as well as for the retiring coal plant. It's a huge business is waiting. So look at how much can come from 220. Another thing is also what Dr. Kakodkar said, the fast neutron-based SMR also can come if that technology comes with metallic fuel. So we can go to the second stage. Third stage can come with the molten salt. So these two quickly we have to develop with our own resources as well as collaboration from abroad. If this can happen in the next 10 years, I feel we'll be also on the track. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Naik, just let me add one more question there. So when you say whatever we have, right, let's talk about FBR. We just had our thorium reserves. We just saw that Kalapakam 500 was, there was a loading of fuel. So why are we not there yet there? And how can we, scale that up in the future?
Oh, that is what is our vision. That is what is India's mission. Because very few countries in the world, until now you have seen, except Russia, nobody is really operating a fast reactor. Because it's not required for them. They are very luxurious countries, less population, lot of energy available. Problem is only for India. God has not given uranium and lot of population, and we want to pay $35 trillion. That is the problem. Otherwise, all these things are not required. So because of that, because we have less uranium, we are compelled to go for plutonium and fast reactor. This is not the requirement beyond our borders. So once the 500 megawatt fast reactor is feasible, I would say that commercially available, I think India will be the world leader in this technology. And parallelly, also the thorium technology is already that, I think, Sukhma is one, and many will hear in the afternoon. I think some of them are sitting here. Of course, they are from private. So the molten salt technologies are now blooming up. I feel sitting on this chair today, the next 10 years will be the goal set for India to have all technologies available. Once they are available, beyond that, it is just question of acceleration. It will happen. Thank you.
We're talking about tripling capacities by FY32. What happened in the renewable energy sector is once when the boom came, we fell short of workforce. So can we be preemptive this time when we are seeing tripling of energy? Can we do something that leads to a workforce that is ready by FY32?
Yeah, I think that's very important, and that is why we need to make this much more broad-based, because if you want to increase the scale, you will need highly skilled people, and that also should go hand in hand when you start building your investment. Not only financial but human resources investment is also equally important. So I think when you plan that this is a path which I want to take, all the three aspects as I told earlier, the manpower or human resources, infrastructure and capital, all three required. There are two things I would like to say. One is the knowledge, or in the sense what the basic understanding about the science, and based on that the technology, where you will need skilled people. So you need also build knowledge base and the skill base. So both kinds of people required. I mean, you can say either engineers and scientists, both would be required. It's not only one part would be sufficient.
Right. I will get, is there a plan out there? And if you could just please elaborate on that.
If you see R&D, the investment from the private sector is happening only from the manufacturing side, not for development of technology. Because even the reactor development rests with the government, right? Government, BAE and all the associated institutions. So the R&D in nuclear is primarily by the government. Only in the manufacturing and the services sector, wherever the optimization and the improvement possible, that's happening. Otherwise, I think it's mainly driven by the government as of now.
Yes, as of now.
Yeah.
Mr. Alawat, you spoke about, capital that you are ready for investment, companies like yours perhaps. What kind of investment do you think that the private sector will take hands-on if allowed into this sector?
So I think investment, meaning we are absolutely depending upon the policies, and DA is in a advanced stage to really formalize this business model. And I think once that is done, then all the, as I have said previously as well, there are strengths that private sector can bring on the table, and that's the capital. And as per the business model, we are willing to bring the capital, and along with that, the procurement and the construction part. I think this particular marriage is a perfect thing that has to take off. Second, about the requirement, because as we say, the world cannot wait beyond this. We have to start acting now, and we are willing to act now. And it is not about the pushback from the CBAM, but this is the right time because it brings a lot of opportunities. So I think this overall conversion has to happen. And point number 3 is about the overall energy requirement. So we spoke about the coal requirement and other thing. We have clearly identified that power is going to be the lead domino to start with. Because the moment we start utilizing deployment of the nuclear power in our steel mills, and including the electric arc furnace, which is the main energy guzzlers, I think we will be knocking off the overall carbon intensity by close to 600 to 700 kg, which is a massive thing going forward. So that's number 1. Number 2 is about the green hydrogen part. I think as an industry, we are here talking about the power, the electrons part of it. And I must emphasize that, nuclear is absolutely important for molecules as well. And why I say molecule, the synchronization, the power, the electrons, and the waste heat that is being generated in nuclear. Lot of steam is being generated, right, in the steam from the nuclear. If we can utilize, there are technologies possible, and we are in an advanced stage of discussion with all this.
Ministry of Power. As Professor Saleh said, I actually like that thing that he talked about silos. Everybody is working in different silos, and it is important to intercorrelate and work in tandem. And one other thing that I want to ask, nuclear is in the electricity sector. So finally it is going to provide us electricity. One issue is, why not have flexibility in nuclear? There was a committee which was also formed to look into it, but I think now with energy storage technologies coming in, why not utilize that? Because renewable energy is going to go out in a big manner. And in terms of policy, one question is how, why not push a policy regarding demand side responses? Like C&I consumers are there. They are connected to the grid. And if they can provide demand side responses, and we have energy storage from the nuclear side, that would also help in, integrating the nuclear in a much better manner. The bottlenecks in the minds of the people will also be reduced.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Naik, would you?
It was a good suggestion that today also, I think the first part I will answer. That today nuclear energy, okay, yesterday it has worked, until now it is being used only for production of electricity. But there are also many other targets today, even to produce high temperature heat, to produce hydrogen, for example, or even for nuclear desalination, for example. Or there are many process industries who needs only heat. They don't need electricity, right? Moment you convert heat to electricity, then the efficiency 70% drops. But the levelized cost of heat from nuclear is several times cheaper as compared to any other clean sources, for example, wind or solar. So as you rightly said, one has to look holistically the full energy management, and that has to be worked out. So this much I can say about the first part of the question. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else would like to attempt?
With wind and solar on the grid, and we can use the balance electricity for other applications. That is the advantage with the small reactors. For example, for the captive units, let's say they use 6 units of 220. 4 units are connected for hydrogen production, two are connecting to the grid. So depending on the demand, they can use that. So that is a possibility only with small and micro reactors. Large size reactors, right?
Maybe you can catch him after.
Yeah. Good afternoon to all. Myself, I am Ram Babu. I am working as Executive Director in Electronic Corporation of India Limited. I am an ex-NPCL person. I have spent almost 34 years in the nuclear power plants. My question to you is not to the forum. My question is to the youth. Are the youth is willing to join this program? Because why I am asking this question is, none of the youngsters, they are not showing interest to join nuclear power plants. The first thing, they are remote, and second thing is the fear. Fear is not much, but the first thing is the remoteness of the plants. Now everybody wants a short-term goal. Now you see the software engineers. Today they will be here, tomorrow they will be somewhere else. But nobody wants to stick to their positions. When I joined in this nuclear power corporation, we spend almost 30 years almost in the fields. But the present youth is not willing and nobody is joining NPCL. This is the present fact.
From this country. The word nuclear, we never distinguish between nuclear fusion and fission. So every time we talk about nuclear energy, we mean fission. Most countries have started to distinguish. US has separated out policy, both in terms of policy to promote private industry and also in terms of safety standards. UK has done that, Canada has done, but India, we still continue to use nuclear means nuclear fission. We have to separate out any comments on that. Thank you.
Turning off carbon dioxide gas into solid carbon stone is how much efficient to protect our climate to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in terms of human and physical.
This question, I think, depending upon the geographies, if you talk about in India, basically this technology is actually the right technology as a permanent sink. Depending upon the rocks, we have very few regions, basically in the northeast, where we have these basaltic rocks which absorbs CO2. It is actually a classic case of mineralization, and it is a permanent sink. So it is absolutely it is one of the circular economy, carbon circular thing that can happen. Just to give you an example, like if you talk about Middle East, which has got a lot of basaltic and pediarotic rocks. So you capture CO2, push the CO2 into these rocks, and they absorb. The rate of mineralization is so high that they again form the calcium carbonate or limestone, which we can again use, right? And we are actually, for your information, we are doing this experiment for our plant in Oman. We are one of the largest steel manufacturers in Oman, and we are exactly doing this experiment where we are pushing the CO2 into the rocks to make it absolutely a permanent sink, and then again use that rock as a calcium carbonate. So very efficient, but very geographic specific. In India, we have only few regions where we have these rocks, but if we have the option, great technology to have. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For India. So my question is to Mr. Rawat. Very interesting points you have brought up, and then it's really good to see that finally private sector is showing so much of interest to get into the nuclear sector. I would just like, you have touched upon the point of C-band. So just wanted to know whether green hydrogen is exactly the real green hydrogen or ideological green hydrogen, because in Europe, green means which is produced by renewable. So will they be accepting the nuclear generated hydrogen, quote unquote, as a green hydrogen?
Great question, Vinay. Maybe just for audience information, we are putting up world's largest green hydrogen steel plant in Oman. And when we were doing this roadshow last year, we spent 60-70% of the time in Europe, and 99% of the customers like Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, automobiles, they are the one who are really liking, they want to really decarbonize their scope 3 emissions. And 99% of the customers, they said, we don't care from where you will bring these electrons, or what we want is you fulfill our product carbon footprint of 600 kgs per ton of steel. Whether it is nuclear or solar, wind, we don't care. Yes, but there are 1% of the customer who are absolutely hypocrites, or what do you say, they are still agnostic about this point that yes, no, sorry, if you are doing it from nuclear, we won't buy it. So I think you will have that 1% is good enough. We don't care about 1%. 99% they are absolutely open. So we have to focus on those 99%. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Personal.
Researching on the nuclear fusion energy, and specifically I'm researching on how we can reproduce hydrogen using nuclear fusion energy. My question to experts is that how can energy companies strike a balance between environment, society and profit, and what are the gaps that they're still missing even after their efforts of using and making their operations more friendly to the environment? Thank you.
I think the youth has the most difficult question because they have to develop India at the same time save a planet, right? So what she says, how your energy system can make a balance between profit as well as the
Environment and society.
environment, right? So I'll give you some examples. I'm basically from a different stream. To save the 2 degrees Celsius limit, what is the IEA target, International Energy Agency target? It says for each unit of electricity you produce, amount of CO2 to be released has to be 11 grams or less. Please remember this number. MIT report if you see, it says no, 11 grams is too high to save a planet. It should be 1 gram of CO2 for 1 unit of electricity. And if you are producing electricity from coal, it releases close to 1 kg, almost 800, 900 grams of CO2 for 1 unit of electricity. And if you look at the different streams, except nuclear and wind, nothing qualifies to produce 1 unit of electricity, not more than 11 grams of CO2. Only 2 streams qualify. So automatically everything is wiped out if you want to save a planet. But the next question which you put very importantly, what is the profit? Because these private investors who are producing electricity for steel, aluminium, whatever they make it, or for hydrogen for your transport or any other fluids, they have to make profit. Today, for India, I'll tell you, I don't know about the global things. The levelized cost of electricity, LCOE, is one of the cheapest in nuclear as compared to all these streams. For example, solar is very cheap, but the moment you put battery storage, the cost is double of nuclear. Same is wind. Same is also with the super thermal coal plant. Moment you go for carbon capture and storage, it's so much uneconomical. Nobody can go for it, even whatever Mr. Navin said. So the only way to decarbon, save a planet, make profit is nuclear, nothing else.
A memento for Sri Naveen Rawat,